Hi there, and welcome to Out There, a Paranormal Podcast. I'm your ghost host, TJ, and on the first of every month, I come out with new episodes about the paranormal that I find spooky and weird. If you don't know what the paranormal is, it's anything that cannot be explained with conventional science. And for this podcast, that means any location, entity, or event with ghostly happenings is on the table. Make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at Out There Paranormals and TikTok at OutThere_paranormal to see the posts we make for each episode and give us suggestions for what you'd like to hear. It's also a great way to join our Discord server. Hey everyone, before we jump into the episode, I just wanted to thank all of you that have joined the Discord server. It's been so fun to talk to you guys and see all of you interact with each other. As promised, the server is expanding, and once we reach 100 members on the server, all of the Out There hosts will be hosting the first live Q&A within the first week of the goal being met. So if you want to be a part of Out There history, be sure to join us using the link on our Instagram. Also, as you heard in the intro, we have officially made an Out There Paranormal TikTok. The first post should go live the day this episode releases, so be on the lookout. And without further ado, today we will be talking about one of the most haunted places in America, a place where over 51,000 soldiers lost their lives during the Civil War, a place where many of the dead still reside and openly make their presence known. We are talking about the ghosts of Gettysburg. Let's dive in. Gettysburg was officially founded in 1786 and was named after Samuel Gettys, an affluent tavern owner and early settler of the land. In 1806, Gettysburg became an official borough of Pennsylvania. Gettysburg would grow over the years, being helped by the use of 10 major roadways that pass through the town. Other than being a famous Civil War site, Gettysburg is also well known for its schooling for higher education. The town boasts many colleges, including the Lutheran Theological Seminary, Harrisburg Area Community College, and of course, the Gettysburg College. Before we go into what made Gettysburg the tourist town it is, I want to go over some general history for those unfamiliar or just need a quick refresher on American history. The Civil War was a 4-year-long war that pitted the northern and southern states of America against each other. 20 states sided with the Union, also known as the North, and 11 with the Confederacy, also known as the South. The last 4 states were considered southern border slave states, though were officially on the side of the Union. As the war went on, it became a tug-of-war as each side fought for the pull of each state. This would lead General Robert E. Lee to launch his second offensive attack into Union territory after his victory at Chancellorsville, Virginia. On July 1, 1863, the Confederate and Union forces would both head north after Chancellorsville. Neither side would cross paths again until the Confederates reached Gettysburg seeking supplies. Marcellus Jones, a Union cavalryman, would be the one to initiate the bloodiest battle on U.S. soil. He fired at his target nearly 600 meters away, and the battle started. By the end of the first day, the Union had set up a defensive position to the south of town, holding many other ridges. On the second day, the Union continued to defend the ridges, taking up a fishhook-like formation across the hills. General Lee would have his men start their attack from the Union's left flank. This would also be the day that the battles of Little Round Top, Devil's Den, and Cemetery Ridge would commence. These would be key areas of contention during the fight at Gettysburg. As the day dragged on, the Union would outflank the Confederates, but the South would still manage to gain a bigger foothold. The morning of July 3rd, Mary Virginia Wade, also known as Jenny Wade, heard a break in the fighting. She was staying at her sister Georgiana's house, helping care for her and her newborn baby. Since she didn't hear immediate fighting, she made her way to the kitchen to start on breakfast. One of the doors led directly outside, but had another door that, when opened, would block the first. Jenny, being cautious, opened this second door, giving herself 2 layers of protection from the battle outside. That brief moment of silence was broken by a loud crack, and Jenny's body falling to the floor. Jenny Wade was the only civilian casualty during the Battle of Gettysburg. The stray Confederate bullet had pierced both doors Jenny was using for protection. It hit her, killing her instantly. The final day of battle also saw minor skirmishes to the east and south, but the main battle would take place at Cemetery Ridge. 12,500 Confederates would meet Union troops and facilitate the bloodiest battle in America. In the end, General Lee issued a retreat as his men were overwhelmed by the Union's artillery and rifle fire. In total, 165,620 troops fought in Gettysburg during those 3 days. Approximately 23,049 Union soldiers died, and 28,063 Confederate soldiers died, totaling in roughly 51,112 lives lost in just 3 days. A few months later, on November 19th, President Abraham Lincoln would give his famous Gettysburg Address at what is now the Gettysburg National Cemetery. And this brings us to the modern day. With so many lives lost, the town is full of spirits, stories, and an absurd amount of evidence. So much so that you can look up Gettysburg ghosts and go to images to find dozens of photos taken around the town. So, where do we start? Gettysburg College was founded 31 years before the devastating fight. Once the Civil War reached its doors, it was caught in the middle of the battle. Because of its size and position, it was used as an impromptu hospital, taking in soldiers from both sides of the war. Due to this, it saw many deaths and is said to be one of the most haunted buildings in Gettysburg. This first story is going to have two main accounts, so I'll go over both of them. In the 1980s, two of the school's administrators were working late. They were making their way out of the building known as Pennsylvania Hall. They got in an elevator and made their way down, watching the numbers slowly descend. Finally, the doors opened and they both froze. In front of them were dozens of figures, some wearing hospital garments and others wearing soldiers' uniforms. As they began trying to process what they were seeing, all the apparitions looked up at the same time and turned to them. They ran until they found the nearest security guard. In a panic, they brought him back to the ghostly site, just to be met with an empty hall. The second story goes as follows. Two school administrators were leaving Penn Hall after a long day. When they were taking the elevator down to the first floor, the elevator went past and brought them to the basement. When the doors opened, they saw dozens of wounded soldiers, many of them missing limbs due to the number of amputations performed in the building. While frozen from shock, they noticed one soldier looking up at them. Once they made eye contact, the soldier began limping over to them like a zombie. The men panicked, hitting the ground floor button over and over again, hoping the door would close. Luckily, it did, just as the soldier reached it. The two men ran to the nearest security guard and then returned to the basement. But it was empty, with no sign of the wounded men. These administrators truly witnessed something that only happens in horror movies. Now, these accounts are further backed up by a couple who, when told the story by a stranger, said they knew all about it because one of their friends was one of the witnesses. However, as it turns out, the friend was not one of the administrators, but someone else who had experienced the exact same thing. During any time of the day, ghosts of soldiers can be seen roaming the halls of the campus. They can be seen anywhere in the buildings, including the cupola, where it's rumored Robert E. Lee himself would stand and watch the battles. This cupola is like a small tower extending off the Pennsylvania Hall building. An unnamed student saw a man wearing a navy blue coat standing in the cupola. The man leaned over the edge and began waving his arms frantically with a look of fear. The student ran to get their roommate, but once he returned to the window, the man was gone. This same event happened again the next day, and once again he was too slow. The third night, however, the student was ready, and the second he saw the man, he ran for his roommate. Finally, he got to his roommate, and his roommate saw the man. Filled with worry and curiosity, they ran from their dorm and sprinted to the next building over, Pennsylvania Hall. Once they arrived, they saw the man still waving for help, and being closer now, They could see that this man wasn't living. They tried yelling out to the man, but he didn't respond. Eventually, they returned to their room to find the man gone once again. This spirit has become known as the Lone Sentinel and is still seen to this day. But of course, no haunted place is quite complete without their own lady in white. In Glatfelter Hall, one can encounter the lady in white. It is rumored that her love was killed during the war, and being unable to deal with the grief, she threw herself from the Glatfelter bell tower. Some rumors also state that looking into her eyes when you see her will cause you to suffer the same fate. The final college spirit we are going to be talking about is the boy in blue. A little boy once fled from the nearby Gettysburg orphanage. On a freezing cold night, he fled to what is now Stevens Hall, but was at the time a preparatory school for girls. Getting too cold to continue, he knocked on a window to get the girls' attention. Feeling bad for the boy, they let him in. Eventually, the head mistress started making her rounds to make sure all the girls were in bed. The girls couldn't find anywhere to hide the boy, so they sent him back outside the window to hide on the ledge. Over an hour later, the head mistress finally left, and when the girls returned to the window, the boy was gone. Only a track of footsteps. Officially, nobody knows what happened, but it is assumed that the boy didn't get very far and succumbed to the cold. To this day, those at the college will see the face of a little boy peering in through ground floor windows. He gets his name because of his blue skin. The orphanage that the little boy fled wasn't always a house of horrors, though. After the war, it was very respectable and filled with happy children. It was once even visited by Ulysses S. Grant. It wasn't until the head of the orphanage passed away and was replaced with Rosa J. Carmichael. Rosa was terrible to the children, often chaining them up in the orphanage's basement. To her, the children were nothing and didn't deserve love. Rumors state that she would have the older boys in the orphanage beat the young girls. She enjoyed torturing these children, and in some alleged cases, she killed them. With all the dark energy around the orphanage, it's no wonder voices are often heard. Visitors to what is now the National Homestead often report hearing the cries of children or even screams. Some visitors will see a young boy who stands in the corner of different rooms, watching as people pass by. Many will pull out phones or cameras to capture a photo of the child, but they'll disappear before they get the chance. Some visitors will capture pictures of mists or shadows while in the basement, and many say that Rosa herself still haunts the orphanage, but there's not much evidence that has been gathered regarding her. Now, we're going to move on over to the Jenny Wade house. As mentioned earlier, this was once the home of Jenny's sister, but it has since been renamed to the Jenny Wade house due to the tragic event. What I haven't mentioned yet was what happened after. Soon after Jenny had been shot, a few Union soldiers made their way into the house and found Jenny. The rest of the family had heard the commotion and found the soldiers. Being tracked by Confederates, the Union soldiers needed to get out and get the family to safety. They grabbed Jenny's body and laid her upstairs. Not finding another way out, they began knocking out loose bricks in a nearby wall with the butt of their rifles. This hole would lead them into the neighbor's house, where they would carry Jenny's body into the basement. Eventually, these soldiers would get the family to safety, and Jenny Wade would be the only civilian casualty during the Battle of Gettysburg. Visiting the Jenny Wade house today, you can still find the same door the bullet had traveled through, with the hole untouched. The two spirits that are said to haunt what is now the Jenny Wade Museum are Jenny Wade herself and her father, James Wade. In the museum, there's a display showing how and where Jenny would have been laid. There will be a photo of it in the Instagram post, and let me tell you, it's very creepy. This is the room James Wade primarily stays in. Those who get the privilege to investigate overnight at the museum often report aggressive actions and voices directed at them. In the first episode of Ghost Adventure's fourth season, Zach and his crew investigate the museum as part of their Gettysburg investigation. When Zach approaches Jenny's display, he feels something or someone aggressively grab his butt. Now, yes, I know what you're thinking. That's really dumb. However, it did get Zach away from the display, which James Wade is known to be territorial over. Could it have been a way to get a laugh out of viewers? Maybe. But if it's real, then maybe James knew what he was doing and somehow knew that grabbing Zach that way would work. During their investigation, they also got an EVP, or an electronic voice phenomenon. It's a female seemingly saying, "I'm pregnant." They immediately assume this is Jenny Wade. Before she died, Jenny's fiance, Johnson Skelly, had been wounded in battle. Word of his injuries wouldn't reach Jenny before her passing, and just a couple days after she had passed, Johnson would also pass. Word of Jenny's passing would not reach him in time. It is assumed by the Ghost Adventures crew that Jenny may have been pregnant at the time that she died, though with the battle raging at the time of her death, a proper autopsy could not be done. Many who visit the museum will say they see her wandering around the house and nearby outdoor areas. Perhaps she's still waiting on her fiancé, or maybe she's just content with being with her father. Nearby Cemetery Hill, we have the Farnsworth House, now called the Farnsworth Inn. During the battle, the Farnsworth House was used by Confederates as an impromptu hospital and outpost. It's said that on the third day of the battle, Union soldiers stormed the house and killed any Confederates and snipers that were still occupying it. The apparitions of many soldiers can be seen patrolling the house, as well as a midwife and a young boy. Some visitors who stay the night in the Farnsworth Inn will report the sensation of being tucked into bed once they cover up and go to sleep. Passers-by will occasionally report seeing a figure standing in a window and watching them. Owners of the inn figured out that the figure always appears in the window of the Sarah Black room. The room is named after a former resident, but no one's quite sure who the figure is. Visitors and employees will also hear disembodied footsteps throughout the inn, smell a strong scent of cigar smoke, and in the attic on quiet nights, you can hear the sound of someone playing a Jew's harp. A local radio station once hosted a special Halloween broadcast from within the inn. The crew dressed up in blue Civil War outfits, and they all referred to the host as Captain. As the broadcast went on, the crew began to notice strange things happening around them. First, it was the footsteps. Then they would notice full apparitions of soldiers running around the house as if preparing for a fight. That night has marked the most sightings the inn has ever had in its history. The last few areas I'm going to cover can all kind of be put under one umbrella. The open battlefields where the soldiers actively fought and died are said to be some of the most active paranormal hotspots on the planet. Areas like Cemetery Hill or Cemetery Ridge, Devil's Den, and many more are all said to have phantom noises. Throughout the night, soldiers can be heard talking or yelling. Drums can be heard. What seems to be fires can be seen across fields. And cannon and musket fire are some of the most common evidence picked up by visitors. Hundreds of people have also captured apparitions that seem to appear and disappear at a moment's notice, or faded figures that seem to glide through the air. Of course, some examples will be available over on the Instagram. Of course, the Ghost Adventures crew managed to grab some evidence of this very phenomenon. While investigating the engine house, which was built on top of an old battlefield, Zach fires a blank round out of a revolver to simulate a live one, and to try and increase the energy of nearby spirits. Moments after Zach does this, he is panning the area with his thermal camera and picks up what seems to be a soldier walking in front of them, right before vanishing. At the Soldiers' National Cemetery, there was often a spirit that park rangers and visitors would see. A man wearing a blue Union coat with a long beard. One park ranger in particular said they spotted the man one night and moved to approach them, but before they could call out, the man had stepped behind a tree and completely disappeared. Over time, people seemed to realize this figure was always seen around the same spot at the cemetery, and in the 1970s, someone had noticed that Captain Miller's headstone was missing an accolade. Captain Miller was awarded the Medal of Honor while he was alive, but his headstone was missing this. It was swiftly brought to the government's attention and updated to display his proper achievement. The figure has not been seen since. But sightings won't always be one spirit at a time. Rangers and visitors alike have reported seeing whole regiments of soldiers walking across the cemetery and fields where they'd once fought. Gettysburg's battlefields are so dense with activity that you are just as likely to capture something during the day as you are at night. Now, I know I've given you guys a lot of stories already from all over Gettysburg, but this episode wouldn't be complete without a couple Reddit stories. This first story was posted by user Bobiani on the r/paranormal subreddit. My husband and I stayed at the Farnsworth house. We went on 2 ghost tours and were in the basement twice. We stayed the night in the Farnsworth house. I slept like a baby and would have slept through the night with no issues. But my husband felt a pressure on his chest around 4 a.m. He wears a CPAP at night to breathe. The hose began to move on its own. He woke me up, and the pressure subsided, but the hose was still moving. He was moving, so it's hard to tell. He was freaked out. I suggested that the kid ghosts were in the room and were interested in the CPAP. I explained out loud that the CPAP helps him breathe at night. They stopped playing with the hose. In the morning, we were packing up to go and find my husband's baseball cap. We were looking everywhere. I found it squished behind a pillow on a rocking chair. I could have sworn I heard it moving. This story isn't a big one, but it was our first encounter. The story comes from user Garnet and was also posted to r/paranormal. I've never told anyone about this except my mom, because I don't think anyone else would believe me. When I was 13 or so, my parents drove our family from Texas to Virginia to visit family. My mom is all about things being educational and killing 2 birds with 1 stone, so one of our stops was in Gettysburg. We took a day to tour the town and the battlefields, and then we were supposed to stay in an Airbnb that night. The B&B was located either right on or very, very close to one of the battlefields. I don't remember which. The entire town was super creepy, and the Airbnb had a weird feel to it, like there was a tension in the air. We checked in and everyone went to bed. Around 3 a.m., I woke up, completely alert, despite it being mid-July in a 19th century building with a window unit AC that limped along just enough to keep the temperature below 80. The room was ice cold, and there was something standing next to me. I'm very glad I had the presence of mind to not open my eyes or even move an inch. I'm pretty sure it knew I was awake anyway, because after about 30 seconds, I could feel it lean down and look me straight in the face. It did not like me or my family. It wanted us out. I could feel how angry it was. After a while, it left my side of the bed and went to look at my brother, my dad, and my mom. It stayed longest by my dad, for some reason. I could tell because I could feel its footsteps on the floor. There wasn't a sound, but there was that definite feel of heavy feet on the floorboards. It came back around to me again and stood for a long time, very close, very hateful. Then it was just gone. I can't tell you how I knew it hated us and wanted us gone. It was like that feeling you get when someone is angry at you, but you don't know why and you're scared to ask. Turned up to 11. I kept this to myself until about 18 months ago when I told my mom that I hated Gettysburg and wouldn't ever stay there again. She just said, "Is it because of that thing that was in the hotel room? I saw it too." Which, you know, of course it is. And that's why I am never going back to Gettysburg. First off, just no. I sometimes fear that something like this will happen in my own home, but to have an enraged Civil War spirit walking your room at night, count me the F out. Secondly, for those wondering how this user stopped at Gettysburg while traveling from Texas to Virginia, he did explain it in a comment. My mom wanted to visit a couple of historical sites while we were up there. We went to Gettysburg first, then circled back to Virginia. We hit a couple of the ones there as well. This last story was posted by user I Am Le Walrus 8 years ago. Now, let me explain. Back in February of 2015, my boyfriend and I needed to get away for a weekend and decided upon Gettysburg. While browsing events which were taking place on that weekend, I purchased tickets for the Jenny Wade and Orphanage Combo Tour. I was completely stoked for this experience and went in with an open mind, as spirits don't always live up to our expectations of them. Well, I bit off more than I could chew during this experience. Let me start by saying that the orphanage is the star of the story. When the tour was led into the cellar of the building, everything shifted. The photo above was taken with my iPhone while sitting next to a shackle which children were chained to while the orphanage was up and running, so it makes sense that the spirit of a child was touching my boyfriend's arm. Not only was my experience at the orphanage rattling, the events to come were also strange and unsettling. During the tour, we learned that the woman who owned and worked at the orphanage treated the children terribly, punishing them senselessly in horrific ways that I will not mention. Cue to when my boyfriend and I arrived back at our hotel room. Remember, I am sensitive to paranormal happenings. We went to sleep with our television tuned to Cartoon Network. I woke up out of a peaceful and dead sleep around 3:30 a.m. On the TV was an anime show featuring a little girl who was an orphan being abused by the woman who ran the orphanage. I felt completely paralyzed as I lay in bed. As I continued to watch this show, the little girl exclaimed that she would no longer let her, the orphanage mother, hurt her anymore. While watching this show, almost against my will it felt, I couldn't get past the notion that someone was standing near my side of the bed, / into the bed, looking over me. It was the most unsettling feeling I've experienced since my Ouija board encounter. After what felt like an eternity of watching this show, I worked up enough courage to sit up and retrieve the remote from my boyfriend's side of the bed, switching the channel to something lighthearted, the Brady Bunch, which undoubtedly changed the intensity of the situation, allowing me to fall asleep after an hour and a half. This was something I've never felt before, and for this, I do believe the energy of someone from that orphanage followed me back to the hotel that night. When I arrived home, there was no negative energy, but I did possess a feeling which stuck with me for a few days thereafter. Believe me or don't, your opinion is your opinion, but I have been having experiences of the paranormal kind throughout my entire life. This was one of the most unsettling experiences I have ever had. I will not return to the orphanage in Gettysburg. Sadly, I can't put the picture on our Instagram due to copyright, but you can find it for yourself from the user's post titled My Ghostly Encounter in Gettysburg. Even with all these stories, it's just the start of all the Gettysburg hauntings. The estimated 51,112 lives lost during the battle trumps the current population, which only sits at around 7,106. It's no wonder that Gettysburg is one of the most haunted places in America. So, what do you think? Are the ghosts of Gettysburg really out there? We are on Instagram at Out There Paranormals and TikTok at OutThere_paranormal. So be sure to follow us and give us your thoughts on the things we cover and maybe some suggestions for what you'd like to hear next. If you like what you hear, be sure to leave us a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It means a lot and it's a great way for others to find and enjoy the podcast, just like you. 1 month from today, we will be talking about houses that go bump in the night. True stories from people just like you with experiences that'll keep you up all night. And maybe a new spooky story from Josh. I will be telling you haunted house Reddit stories. See you next time. This episode was written and hosted by me, TJ, with logo designed by Jason Zykes and Josh, and theme music from purpleplanet.com.